In the first book of Maccabees, Onias the first, high priest of Israel during the reign of Alexander the Great, received a letter from Arius the first of Sparta. This is what the Spartan King said. We have met with a certain writing whereby we have discovered that both the Jews and the Lacedaemonians, Spartans, are of one stock and are derived from the kindred of Abraham. It is but just therefore that you, who are our brethren, should send to us about any of your concerns as you please. We will also do the same thing and esteem your concerns as our own, and will look upon your concerns as in common with yours. Demoteles, who brings you this letter, will bring your answer back to us. This letter is foursquare, and the seal is an eagle with a dragon in his claws. What Onias sent back did not survive, but 100 years later, Jonathan Maccabeus was fighting against the Seleucid Empire trying to free Judea. The Seleucids were one of the key players that emerged after the death of Alexander the Great and were founded by Seleucus the First Nicator, the commander of the Silver Shields. In an attempt to find more allies, Jonathan sent a letter to Sparta, saying this: Jonathan the high priest and the elders of the nation, and the priest and the other of the Jews, unto the Lacedaemonians, their brethren, send greeting. There were letters sent in times past unto Onias the high priest from Darius, who reigned then among you, to signify that ye are our brethren, as the copy here underwritten doth specify, at which time Onias entreated the ambassador that was sent honorably and received the letters, wherein declaration was made of the league and friendship. Therefore we also, albeit we need none of these things, that we have the holy books of Scripture in our hands to comfort us, have nevertheless attempted to send unto you for the renewing of brotherhood and friendship, lest we should become strangers unto you altogether, for there is a long time past since ye sent unto us. We therefore, at all times, without ceasing, both in our feast and other convenient days, do remember you, in the sacrifices which we offer, and in our prayers, as reason is, and as it becometh us to think upon our brethren. And we are right glad of your honor. As for ourselves, we have had great troubles and wars on every side, for so much as the kings that are round about us have fought against us. Howbeit, we would not be troublesome unto you, nor to others of our confederates and friends in these wars, for we have help from heaven, that succoureth us. So as we are delivered from our enemies, and our enemies are brought under foot, for this cause we choose Numenius the son of Antiochus, and Antipater son of Jason, and sent them unto the Romans to renew the amity that we had with them and the former league. We commanded them also to go unto you, and to salute and to deliver you our letters concerning the renewing of brotherhood. Wherefore now ye shall do well to give us an answer thereto. Now, this has been a point of interest to me for some time. A part of my history thesis focused on this. Spartan King Arius mentioned their kinship to Abraham. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus in 200 BC recorded that Epher, grandson of Abraham, married one of his daughters off to Hercules. Epher invaded Libya, and for my etymology nerds, Epher is where we get the word Africa from. Hercules had been active in Africa during his quest to get 3 apples from the garden of the Hesperides. And of course, the Pillars of Hercules, also known as the Strait of Gibraltar, show us another connection Hercules has to Africa. But a good historian just doesn't believe everyone. You need to find some more evidence. If we always believed old sources like Herodotus, we would believe in dog-sized ants, the ancient Egyptian cure for baldness, and other wild things. This is why I turned to archaeology and to the ancient Canaanite polytheistic faith to look for more evidence. Before Sparta existed, the Greek world was dominated by the Bronze Age powers of Mycenae and Knossos. These up-and-coming civilizations turned to the east, where civilization was much older and drew great influence from their art, religion, and culture. However, the Bronze Age civilizations collapsed, a mystery still unsolved to this day. In my thesis, I rejected the view that the Spartans were Dorians, but I saw them as a mixed group of Dorians, Mycenaeans, and Phoenicians who had banded together to rebuild society after the Dark Age of Greece. This was something that could be seen in their religious practices, the worship of Artemis, Orthia, and the temple to Athena, Chalkiokius, two aspects of these gods that weren't worshipped anywhere else in Greece. Their votive use of footed bells, their shrine to the bones of Orestes, the practice of Marseille, where the king would eat with his men and sing praises to the ancestors, frequently referenced in Ugaritic, Phoenician, biblical, Elephantine, Nabatean, Palmyrenian, and rabbinical text. Membership in the Marseille, passed from father to son, was considered a symbol of high society. The Spartans had their own form of this called the Syssitis, which was effectively their communal mess as warriors. I could keep going with references to their religious mask, their odd affinity for the island of Samos, and so much more that paints a complicated picture of Spartan prehistory and points to a mixed group of people. But let's even look at Hercules and Samson. Both seem so similar, yet they are both actually drawing from an even older god, Melkart, who was often seen with a lion to represent his role as king. What I think we are seeing is a much older civilization still being remembered after a literal dark age. Let's now turn to the founding of Sparta and a man named Lycurgus. The impact that Lycurgus had on Spartan society is unquestionably huge. However, due to his semi-mythic status, historians try to explain the reforms in Sparta as a societal change in response to the Macedonian Wars. But the mythical story goes something like this. Lycurgus's older brother is the king of Sparta, but has an untimely death. Lycurgus is made king, but his brother's wife is pregnant. When the baby is born, he steps down and crowns the baby king. Obviously, this makes him seem as a wise and just ruler, and everyone respects this choice except for his sister-in-law and her family, who see him as a threat to their power. Lycurgus fears his nephew will be killed and he will be framed for it, so he decides to travel the world to find out what every civilization does best. He finally returns and is once again seen as the true king. He reforms Sparta by implementing all the things he saw other civilizations do best, thus making Sparta the warrior society we remember them today as. After his successful reforms, he holds a citywide meeting and makes everyone swear to uphold his laws until he returns. His nephew, the Spartan people, literally everyone swears, and then Lycurgus leaves and is never ever seen again. But the story of Lycurgus and the archaeology points to people who remembered where they came from. A part of Spartan identity could be linked back to the Levant, where the Phoenicians emerged 3,000 years before Christ. The Phoenicians survived the Bronze Age collapse, but would continue to grow more and more irrelevant. But in the southern Peloponnesus of Greece, the Spartans remembered that some part of them owed a debt to Phoenicia and the Levant. Paul Cartledge, the most prominent living historian on Sparta, once said this: "The Spartans were notoriously conservative in their expressed ideology and prone to overvalue the past, so an appeal to obligating precedent might have well struck a chord." Cartledge is making reference to when the Samians petitioned the Spartans to help them fight Polycrates. They showed up at the first meeting and gave a long speech about why the Spartans should help them. The Spartans turned them down flat. The Samians show up again with an empty flour sack and said the sack needs filling. Sparta then agreed to help them, but not before saying it was still 4 words too many. You see that same Samian politicking in Jonathan's letter to Sparta. Though entirely too wordy, it is not without its merits. He makes reference to the past. He invokes the warrior prowess of the ancient Jews and how God is with them, and he remembers Spartan history, for the Macedonians frequently made reference to how all the Greek city-states, save Sparta, aided them in their frequent victories with Alexander the Great. Smart guy, Jonathan. Sadly, he was dealing with a Sparta that was quickly on its way to being a tourist site for Romans, and not the glorious people they once were. So even though on the surface the multiple references in Maccabees to Sparta seems odd to those without context, it points to a much longer history, and how Sparta and the ancient Israelis always remembered their own history and traditions that paid a debt to Phoenicia and the glorious past.